Hello and welcome to the second video of this channel. I want to start off by thanking everybody who has watched the first video last week and has commented and subscribed as part of the process. Really appreciate all the lovely comments I've had on social media and on YouTube. It's taken me by surprise that how much everybody's really appreciated that video. So I really hope that the subsequent videos will keep capturing your attention and you keep learning and keep subscribing, please. So today we're going to stick with tables, but they're going to be a little less visual. We're going to look at a bit more business type tables that we're used to seeing, and we're going to look at a particular feature that I believe is a little bit underutilized in Tableau. And we're going to look at that across two different dashboards. The first dashboard that you're seeing here is a dashboard that is just analysing the sales for particular categories across 4 different regions that this business operates in. We have 3 measures for each of those regions that we're looking at. We're looking at the sales, the pure sales value, the share of the sales for the category, and then the profit ratio for each of these categories. Now, all 3 of these measures that we're looking at here are 3-year averages. The detail behind those 3-year averages are hidden away. And this is what we're going to show today, is how we can do that in a very simple format. So with a click of a button, a custom button that I've created here, we can open up that detail of those 3 years. And we create a very wide table. So one that you can bring in at your leisure to find the detail behind those 3-year averages. But normally we wouldn't want to show all of this all at once. So it's really nice to be able to have that option of collapsing your table down at a click of a button. So we're going to look at how we built that. I say we, me. Next, we're going to look at a second dashboard that takes that concept just a step further. So sometimes if you imagine when you're building out reports or your usual tables, maybe you work in finance, you've got a profit and loss or a balance sheet, you might have a large number of categories that will just naturally come into your table. But a lot of those categories are very insignificant in their value and in their numbers. So you don't always want to show those. You want to be able to control taking those out just to condense that table down and really focus that table onto the real items that matter, or the real items that are driving your totals or your business profit, for example. So here we are doing exactly that. We are taking away those insignificant categories based off of a couple of settings that we can control. But when we take them away, those categories are still adding to the total of the table. So I'm going to talk through how we can build that as well. Lastly, I just want to point out that there's going to be a follow-up video to this, hopefully today, that's going to show how you can create this UI element at a single click of a button that can control more than one UI pane and keep those working in the same space. So talking at the space that this is taking up here, a single click, it will close it down and open up another one that's using essentially the same space on the dashboard. That's a little bit more involved and requires its own video, so hopefully I can get that recorded today. Let's step out of Tableau right now, or Tableau presentation, and let's just talk about this feature. So this feature is called Hide. You may be well aware of it, but what hopefully we'll do in the course of this video is take it from the basics to this more advanced version that we have here. So let's open up a new worksheet. If I go into my list of dimensions here and I bring in my subcategory, so these are all the categories that we were seeing in that table. I find some sales, I'll just bring some sales in and sort them. Now, the hide feature is a little bit hidden away because you have to right click on any mark or any header and it appears here in the list. It's just hide. So I could, if I want to, if I'm not interested in seeing binders, I can hide them away and they come out of my table. If I want to, I can hide away more than one thing at a time. I can get them back again by right clicking and clicking show hidden data, and they come back into the list. But crucially, if I bring in the totals here, let's go my totals, let's bring in the label onto here. So let's pay attention to the total value here of 2.29 million. Let's take out the biggest subcategory here and hide it away. When I hide that away, my 2.29 million doesn't change. The total is still totaling based off of what's in the table, not what's in the view. So that's the basics around hiding. You have that option to hide away marks or hide away parts of your table. So maybe you might have a null that's appearing in your table and you just want to get rid of it. You could right click on the null and say hide, and it goes away. But what we can do with this is we can actually create more of an automation to what's happening. So for example, we can write a calculation. Let's use index. So index is a table calculation that will just sequentially number each row in the view at the moment. So if I say my index number is less than or equal to 5, and I bring that on to my table, what that's going to default doing is going to default to compute using table down, which is exactly what I wanted to do in this case. So what's happening is index, if I really break this down for you, index, let's call that index number, index. So if you're unfamiliar with index, let's just make this discrete and I can bring this in. So what index is doing is just placing a number for each row on the table. And what we've said here is we're saying that if our index number is equal to or less than 5, then make it true. So we might utilize the hide feature by saying we're only interested in anything that is true. So if I right click on the false result and say hide it, I can hide away all of those false calculations, or the calculations that result in false. My total doesn't change, but I'm only keeping the top 5. It's the top 5 because I've sorted by the value. So that's one way that we can utilize that calculation. And that's essentially what I'm doing in our original table or original view over here, is I am utilizing that show hide feature. So if we step into the table, I'm utilizing the show hide feature in this table. And if I show you how that's working, so let's show the header. So I've got here the region, my measure names, which are the 3 values, which are breaking the region up by 3. And then I've got the period in here. But the period at the moment, which is the years essentially, they're not showing because I've got my show hide calculation working. So I don't want to break this, so let's go back to my dashboard and let's just break this open. So I can now see what's going on. Right. And go back into the tab. There's a reason why I have to go back to the dashboard to open that up, because I've got some complex stuff going on that button. So here we have it. So we've got our period, which is our current year, 1 year, 2 years, and then I've got a total. So if I right click, just show you the format of that total, all I've done is I've renamed the label for the total to 3-year average. So you would normally see that just saying total like that. And then I've got this calculation here, this pill, that is resulting in show. So let's see that calculation. Where is it? Show hide. Show hide 3-year detail. Let's edit that. So I'll zoom in on this for you. We have a parameter that says expand selected. When that parameter is false, it says show. When that parameter is true, it says hide. Okay. At the moment, the parameter is set to false. So we're seeing it saying show. So what we've done, or what I've done is I've shown this header so we can see the result of it. If I were to change it to say show hidden data, nothing would change, because what I'm doing is I'm actually saying that when the result of hidden or hide has been selected, then I'll still see it here. So I know this is probably a bad explanation. So for example, if I bring this back into my option to collapse the container, my collapsing no longer works because I've just taken and I've just unhidden these hide options. Right, so I have a calculation that in this cell it will only ever equal hide or show. What I have done though, there's no extra column. It is all happening in this cell here. It's either show or hide. But what I told Tableau is when it says hide, right clicked on this and said hide it. So that now means that the table collapses up. So when my parameter that I was using, which was this one here, I pressed show, not edit. There. So this parameter here is currently set to true. Okay, so when that's set to true, the value that is set to hide, and when it's set to hide, we've asked Tableau to hide away those columns or hide away those values. When we change the parameter to false, that value will change to show. So we can now see those columns again. And then I just hide away that header so you don't ever see it when we are controlling that. I'm just going to put this back to false a second so that the button on here doesn't break. So we've got this collapsed down. So on a click of this button, I'm sending a parameter action that's updating that parameter that's controlling that show and hide element of that calculation. And when it results in hide, these columns are hidden away. When it results in show, those columns are shown. And that's a really quick and easy way of just using a single parameter to control whether or not you see or hide away elements of your dashboard or elements of your table. In this case, I'm using, because of the data set that I've got, I'm using my 3 years that build up to a 3-year average. But when I hide those away, you'll notice that the values in the 3-year average, they don't change. They are still calculating off of those 3 columns that I had there, because this is still a total. So that's our little feature for the first dashboard. It's quite straightforward, he says. Dashboard number 2 is showing how we can determine whether or not we want to show categories that, or we only show the categories that are most significant, and we say, or we can control what the elements are that make them significant. In this case, I've got 3 elements that I'm controlling here. I'm controlling the categories in view by the sales value. I'm controlling the categories in view by the sales share, and the categories in view by the profit ratio. So I'm saying, under my controls here, if I click on controls, I have 3 limiting parameters. I can say only show me categories that have sales more than 1,000. Only show me if they've got more than 5% share, and only show me if they've got more than 10% profit. Now, if they have less than any of those, then they get hidden away. So I'm only ever going to show a category that meets all three of those criteria. So we can look at this. So this is all current year. So we can look at the first row here. They've got 60,000 sales, so that meets that criteria. They've got 8.3% share, so that meets that criteria. And then they've got plus or minus 10% profit or loss, which is, in this case, it's a negative loss, so it's a significant loss. So in this case, what I'm saying around the profit is, I'm only interested if the profit is particularly high or the profit is particularly low, to show it as it's a pertinent thing to show. But obviously you can change whatever you like in terms of what the parameters are compared to the metrics that you have in the view. So let's see how this works. Let's see if I can take this row here. Let's just see what it was. So it's tables. Let's see if we can take tables out. So if I change my sales limit to something that's just over 60,000, so let's go 70,000. I will lose some of these other rows here, but I should keep this 72. So let's put that in. And there we go. I've kept my 72 and I've kept my 105, but I've lost my tables. Let's put that back. Maybe let's now try my share in profit. Let's put this as 9% share that I'm interested in. So my 8.3 should go away, my 5.9 should go away, these two should go away, so I should be left with 2 here and 1 down the bottom. Let's try that. And we do. We lose tables again. So you can see now how I can control what I'm interested in, or the levels of the data that I'm interested in. So I can say, I could take out this profit again by saying I'm only interested in anything that is plus or minus 15%. And my profit goes away and I've got just stuff that is really significant now. And I can obviously control that to smaller levels. I can say 2%, and I bring things in at a lot more. Maybe I put my share down to 2% share. I might bring in a few more rows. Maybe I have no sales limit. I didn't actually bring in any more rows. So if I put them all to 0, I start getting my scroll bar because my table's starting to build up. Now, let's talk about that to begin with, and then we'll talk about this down the bottom here. It might be hard for you to see, but there's a little bit of narrative down here saying subcategories not shown due to the sales share absolute profit limiters, and it says none. If I start removing some, so let's put these back to the values. There you go. So I've just lost a row, just saw that move. I've now got fasteners up here. So fasteners just came out. So let's just bring that back to 0. Ooh. I'll give it 10, that'll do. Let's see if let's find fasteners. There we go. So fasteners here have got less than 1,000. So this sales is in 1,000. So it's got 900 sales rather than 1,000. So when I put that limiter in, saying everything needs to have at least 1,000 sales to appear here because that makes it significant. When I put that to 1,000, fasteners drop out, but it appears now in my list of what's not being shown. So the idea here is if we're hiding away parts of the data, but that data is still making up our totals, we want to be able to indicate to people what is not in the view, what have we taken away. So we can make that list appear a lot more or greater by bringing some of these up. So I'm just going to put them back to what we started with because it makes it easier. So now I've really reduced the table down. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 subcategories being shown, still making up the full total. And then I've hidden away 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 subcategories. and they're appearing here. So we're going to talk about how do I do this, and then how do we do this, and then that's the end of that video. So let's have a look. This is our table. We've got a calculation here saying parameter row identifier. So let's bring it out of the way, and we'll find that calculation. Parameter row identifier. There we go. Edit. Let's have a look. So we are saying that we've got 3 parameters. Those are the 3 controls where I was entering those numbers. And I'm doing this comparison now. So I'm saying, does my sum of my current sales, so the sales in the first year, are my sales less than what I set as the limit? Then I'm saying, is my share, my current year share, less than what I've got in my parameter? It's divided by 100 because, excuse me, I'm going to cough. It's divided by 100 because the parameter works in decimal places rather than the full percentages. If it's less than that, then also make that true. So if the result here is less than the sales, then that results in true. If the result here is less than the share limit, then that result is true. And then finally, so that's looking at this column, sorry. And then finally, the profit ratio, the current year profit ratio, again divided by 100 because this works in decimals. If that absolute of that is less than this, then result in true. So if any one of these doesn't meet the limiter, then it results in true. So let's show you that. No, let's undo that. Let's show the header. So this header results in this column. Everything here that is still in view is false, because what I've done is, if I show the hidden data, everything that doesn't meet my parameters are shown as true, and I've told it to right click on here to say hide the true values. So we can sort of analyze that. So my limiters on the sales, so bookcases is being hidden away because I've got a limiter of 1,000 sales, and I've got more than that, so that's okay. That should result in a false. I've got a share of 5%, but the bookcases share is 4%, so that would result in a true. And then in my absolute profit, anything over 10% or under 10%, and this is only nearly 2%. So that would result in a false. I've got 2 falses and a true, which results that into a true. Here I've got enough sales, I've got enough share, but again I don't have enough profit to make it significant enough to show, so I've hidden that away. And it is as simple as that. You can now control, using your parameters via a calculation, to be able to hide this away. To create a row or create a column that gives you true or false, and you just tell it to hide the false results. True results. I don't know, I've got a cough all of a sudden. So that is the basis for the show, or the hide feature. We can now automate that using a parameter simply, directly, that we saw in the first table, or we can use it as a calculation that's looking at a number of different things on your sheet to allow you to control what's in view. So how do we create this little narrative down the bottom? As you can see, it's not in the same object, it's a separate sheet. How do we create this so that we understand what we've taken out? So this is now the real complicated part of this whole video. So let's have a look. First thing to note is we've got all the same filters with a couple of other filters here. We've got the parameter row identifier and something that says last. I might have to edit me out coughing. What we've got here is we've got subcategory in the view. So if we show that, we've got one row that says supplies. And then we've got something that says caption text. If I bring that on and show that as text, you can see what that's doing. So our caption text is this here. So if I go back a couple of steps, it was set to polygon because all I want to show in the actual dashboard is this element up here. If I had anything else in here, I might get some formatting appearing or some lines or some of the text where I don't want it to show. So I've set it to a polygon so I don't see anything in this pane. I hid this header away so I didn't see that. But if I bring this back just so you can see what's happening, I've got subcategory that I've only got one row appearing which says supplies, and then I've got actually the text here that's appearing up there. So how is this working? I've got a last filter. If I edit that and show you, I'm using the function last, and the function last tells us that it returns the number of rows from the current row to the last row of the partition. So are we on the last row? If we are, then the last row equals 0, so if we're on that last row, then it results in true. So which is why we are filtering for the last row up here. If I take that last row off here, we can see that I am now receiving all of the subcategories that we have available to us. Well, not absolutely every subcategory because I've got a second filter going on here, but what we can see are these are all the subcategories that made up that list that we had that was showing up here. But now that list has changed, it's showing all. I don't want that to show all. That there, that all is coming from the caption text. So it's coming from the same field that is giving us this supplies, paper, machines, labels, furnishings. But when I have more than one subcategory in the view, it results in all. That's not very helpful for telling us exactly which subcategories are coming out, which is why we end up having that last filter being applied, because if we only have the one row in here, it gives us exactly what's on that last row. So let's just really quickly create the last number just to show you how that's working in terms of what we're seeing on this dashboard. So we can see that last starts at the last partition and it starts counting upwards to the first. So it works in the opposite direction to first. So when last equals 0, that tells us we've got our last row. And our last row gives us the full text that we want to bring up into our title up here. So how is this working? What's happening here in terms of the calculation on the caption text? So the caption text, this is the difficult part. Luckily in the workbook I have described what's happening here, so we've got a full description, but let's zoom in. So effectively what we're doing is we have this calculation here. What we're trying to do is we are trying to sequentially add each subcategory to the list as we run down the table, which is where we are using the previous value. So the previous value looks up what was on the line above, brings that through, and then it adds that to the category that we are on for that line. So for example, if there isn't a line above, we are just taking art and bringing that in. We're saying attribute of that subcategory. When we move down a line, we are saying that we want the previous value, or we want to take the attribute of the subcategory that we're on for the book, for the line that we're on, so bookcases, and then add to that the previous value for the subcategory, which was art. So we concatenate those together. So we come down the next line, we take the attribute of the subcategory, which is chairs, and then we add to that the narrative that we took from the previous value, which is the bookcases and art. So this part adds to it. And we keep doing that until the very last line we get the full list here. That's effectively what's happening in this calculation. There's some elements around here about adding full stops at the end of the line just to make it look nice and tidy, and adding a comma and space in between each label. And we can utilize that by applying that last filter. So that last filter says last equals 0. So when we're on the last row, only identify that, or only give us that. And when we do that, the all value up here converts or changes to what we have in terms of calculation. So let's just put that in, last. So bring that in, we say last is true, because last equals 0 is the calculation. And when we do that, we get our last row of the table with the full list of what's in here. Just quickly take that out. This list of subcategories is the list of the stuff that we have removed via our parameters, our limiters. And that's coming in because we are using the same calculation, this param row identifier, so the one that we were looking at before, to say, if you remember, when we brought the header in to the table, we were seeing on some rows it said true and on other rows it said false. Wherever it said true, that row had failed on one of these criteria, essentially. It failed to pass the limiter. It was less than the value that we'd put in. So all of those rows that said true are all the rows we want to bring in to this table here, so we can list them sequentially. Which is why we've got this param row identifier saying true. Whenever a subcategory equals true, it means that it's one of those ones that has failed, so we want to bring them in. If I took that out, we would get the list of all of the subcategories regardless of whether or not they have failed on our limiters or not. So that's a very sort of sophisticated way of showing which items have been removed because they failed the criteria that we'd set in the table. So just bring that back in, so we'll bring a last in because we only want the last row. And I would take that because I don't need that. I would hide that header, and then I put this back to being a polygon so that I don't see it here, but my list is still showing. And if I show you that title, I could bring this up a bit bigger so you can see what it is. It's just a piece of text followed by the caption, the value that's coming from this table. And that is essentially that. So we now have our table that we can control our categories, so we only see the most significant categories. It could be that we have a table where we operate in multiple countries around the world. We only want to see those countries or those markets that are particularly significant to our business. We don't want to see all the small places where we've only just started selling or we've only just started operating in. We want to take those out, so we could set those limiters to say only show us the stuff that is really pertinent to us. And we can do that with our controls here. We've also then list those items that are no longer or not significant enough to be shown in the table, just so we've got that full transparency of what's being taken away or hidden. But those values are still applying or still counting up into the totals, because the hide feature doesn't take away from it's not filtering it, essentially. It doesn't take away from the total calculation. And then we also looked at a more simple version of this where we're using the hide feature just to take away the detail, and that was a straightforward look at, is the parameter telling us we want to show it or not show it? And if it was showing, then we would then the columns would come in. If they was not showing it, then the value would change and those columns would hide away. Two really useful use cases for that hide feature, I believe. Something that I don't think people use probably enough or are aware that they can use it, because normally you would go down the lines of trying to filter this stuff out, but if you filter it, then you affect your totals. Anyway, as promised, I'm going to go away and probably record now a video on how to create this stuff, that it works very neatly, so we're not getting that horrible highlighting staying on any of these icons, and I can control one object from another. Thank you for watching this, and I hope you watch the next video too. Thank you very much.